Hi, I am Liz Hirschnoff-Tolley, and welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. And the reason for this podcast is to meet with our elected leaders and have conversations, just as if we were having coffee in a coffee shop. So we're having coffee. My guest today is a senator from the great state of Pennsylvania. He is running for re-election, but we're not here to talk about politics. We're here to talk about heart and humanity, because I think that as we learn more and more about each other, no matter what party or where we come from, we actually can come together. So as I was thinking about you and our conversation, I was thinking a few guests ago, we were talking about the sandwich generation. As a person, you're taking care of your parents and your children. And so I've been there. I had little kids and I had elderly parents, and I understand that. And I don't necessarily say the same thing for you in terms of the personal. We can talk about it. But I look at your career overall as sort of being in that sandwich where you have spent so much time taking care and making sure that children were taken care of and the elderly were taken care of and people that were in need. But I look specifically at those two groups in terms of where your passion has been. So I wanted to welcome you, and I thought that was an interesting way to kind of explain who I think you are from what I've seen. And we're going to learn a lot more in a few minutes about your heart and your humanity.
Liz, thank you very much for that introduction. I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but I think it's an accurate summation of some of the work I've done. But recently, I just had an experience with the dynamics of that sandwich generation with my mother. We were just talking a moment ago about her passing on the 11th of August. But I can't say it's an experience personal to me as an individual, because I wasn't doing much of the work. It was my sisters who were caring for her over many, many years, often not directly, not direct caregivers, but making sure that she had the care that she needed.
Right.
When she needed to get to the doctor, when she needed to have an operation, when she ultimately needed in-home care, basically 24-hour care.
Yes.
It was my four sisters and my wife. It pains me to say this, but it's true. The women almost exclusively in the family. My mother had 4 daughters and 4 sons, and I'm one of the 4 sons that didn't do nearly as much as my sisters. But I think it's typical that in so many American families, when there is caregiving responsibilities, or at least assisting caregiving, that women are shouldering that burden, and it's a very heavy burden that
Yes.
So many women face.
Your mother, just hearing that, I honor her, just knowing that she raised 8 children and that 4 of them were boys. But could you talk a little bit about what it was like to grow up and what your mom was like? Your dad, I know, was also a leader, and give everybody a brief idea of where you come from. Sometimes people think you appeared. You're a senator, you've appeared, you know?
No, I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where I still live. Spent most of my life there, all but a few years in college, law school, and then a few years around that time in my 20s. But was blessed to live in a community that was safe and nurturing. And starting with my parents, they had, I guess you might describe it, to say it was a good marriage as an understatement. It was kind of a storybook marriage, the kind of marriage everybody would want, where every day of our lives we knew that they loved us. And my father never made a ton of money till much later in his life, when he was in between elections and joined a big law firm. But growing up, we were never wanting. We had enough to eat, we had shelter, we had education, we had the blessings of 2 remarkable parents. And when you raise 8, you realize that now my wife Teresa and I have 4 daughters.
That's a lot.
4 is a lot these days. I at some point I realized that my daughters, with regard to Teresa and me, with her, they gave her love and respect, and to me they gave love, because they actually feared her more than they feared me. But when I was growing up, we were really blessed to have that nurturing environment, and all the benefits of what I would call an upper middle class life, and all that meant. And it gave each of us a real foundation. It helped us years later to be better parents, to be better spouses, I think better citizens.
Yeah. What did your mom impart to you that you've carried on through? Because she was a special person, and we talked a little bit about her heart and her kindness, and how has that carried on in the work you do as an elected official?
I think what she taught us, and usually by way of example, not always by talking at us or preaching, but there were times when she would repeat things, which is something that we should all remind ourselves of. When you think you're having a tough day, you think things aren't going well for you, you can always point to someone else that's having a much more difficult day or difficult month or year or lifetime. I think more by way of example, not by what she said.
Yeah.
She taught us how to treat people with dignity and respect, no matter who they are. And I mentioned when she passed in August, we had a viewing at a church where the funeral was. And because she was so well known and she was 91, she had also, when my father was ultimately elected governor, he had run for governor multiple times and lost. When he finally won, she was thrust into this role as first lady. So she had, from that and from for other reasons, had some prominence. But despite all that prominence, and despite all of the different kinds of people she met throughout her life, there was one theme running throughout that wake line: 7 hours and 45 minutes of people coming to pay their respects. It was the same sentiment, whether they were some elected official that knew her in her capacity,
right,
political dynamic, or whether it was someone that helped her at a store or waited on her at a restaurant or something like that. It was the same theme. She was always kind to us. She used to remember people's names. I don't know how she did it. She might see them once every 10 years and she'd remember who they were.
It's a gift.
Yeah, it really is a gift. It's almost like a supernatural ability. But despite her prominence as a citizen, she treated everyone the same. And she didn't have different rules for different people.
Yes.
Everyone got the same treatment. So I think that's a kind of a life lesson that I was blessed to have imparted to me.
Did you have a teacher or somebody that inspired you through school? A lot of people have had a teacher that just was somebody that really got them through tough times, or at least motivated them, or they look back and say, if it weren't for this teacher.
Yeah, I think for me it was both teachers and coaches.
Right. What sports did you play?
Basketball.
Okay.
In high school, through high school, when we were younger, was Little League Baseball and sandlot football, those kinds of things. So I remember in one particular case, I was on the junior varsity basketball team as a sophomore, and then later played in the varsity team. But our coach, who was both the junior varsity coach and the assistant on the varsity, his name was Jack Lyons. Jack is still around, a resident of Scranton, but he challenged you in a very, I'll call it a primitive way. It wasn't like, hey, I hope you can play defense and do well, and don't worry if you make a mistake. When you made a mistake, you got the hell kicked out of you, verbally at least.
Yes.
But he pushed you to do your best and to endure some pain. For example, in basketball, people don't think about it as a sport like football, but it is really, in large measure, a contact sport.
Yes.
And if the ball went on the floor and you didn't dive on the floor, which can hurt if you don't do it the right way, diving on top of a basketball on a hard floor, if you didn't do that, he would punish you for it. And as a 15-year-old, I probably needed some of that. It almost sounds crazy. But he pushed you to do your best.
Because he believed in you. He knew you could be better.
He did. And he knew you had potential. And I think his belief in me, even though I wasn't a great scorer, gave me confidence that I could do something difficult. But I was fortunate that it's an interesting combination of Catholic IHM nuns, sisters, and Jesuit priests. So throughout my education, we had lay teachers as well, but I had 8 years of Catholic nuns and lay teachers. And then for high school and college, I went to Jesuit high school and college. So I think the overarching theme or lesson that I learned from that is trying to commit yourself to excellence. In other words, if you have a subject you're supposed to study or an assignment, try your best to achieve a level of excellence, which I didn't always achieve. But
they pushed you to do it.
They did. And I think the same, they said it in different ways, but the nuns and the Jesuit priests taught us to do your best to lead a life for others. Those two words, for others. And we're blessed to have those good examples.
Yeah. And talk about your wife, because she's had to, you talk about her in respect to helping with your mom. Yeah. She raised 4 kids. I'm not saying she helped, but you may have helped. She raised 4 kids.
She did most of it.
And talk about her commitment also, because to give you the opportunity to do what you do, which is to lead in the Senate and not be home all that much. And then how you also find time to be with your girls. I know they're older now, but how you found time to be participating in family life.
A remarkable sacrifice. Therese had a really significant career before her daughter Elise was born. She was an economics accounting major at Holy Cross, where we met in Massachusetts, and was a stellar student there. And she had a job right out of college, working for what was then Peat Marwick Mitchell, what was one of the big 5 accounting firms at the time. And that led to a job here in Washington. She worked for the Washington Post, but on the corporate side, she was the coordinator of financial reporting for the Post. They had all kinds of SEC filings, complicated stuff. And she was the lead on that. So she had a significant career that she could have continued, and she set that aside to raise our daughters. And then ultimately, I guess when my youngest daughter was, the year my youngest daughter, Marina, was born, that's when I launched my career in politics, and I haven't left politics since, politics and government. She has given a tremendous sacrifice to allow me to continue the work that I do, and just did a remarkable job raising our daughters. I mean, they are loving and successful and just wonderful people. 99.9% because of their mom. I didn't do nearly as much as some dads do, but I was really, really fortunate. And Teresa and I met on a blind date. I don't know if you want to hear that story. But
you met on a blind date. Well, now I want to hear a little bit. Yeah.
I'll try to give you the short version. We're seniors in college. I don't really know her that well. I've met her, but I don't know her. But a lot of our friends know each other. And her roommate calls me, Mary Pat Finnegan, calls me on the phone on Saturday and says, this is like one of these conversations you'll never forget. Phone rings, I answer it. She says, "Bob, it's MP." That was her nickname for Mary Pat. I said, "MP, what's going on?" She said, "Would you like to go to the Lehigh dorm blind date ball with Therese?" And I said, "Sure. I don't know her really, but I'll go."
Wow.
So there ensues like a 2-week period where I knew I was going with her. I couldn't tell her. That was the rule. So I tried to get to know her. In that 2-week period, it was an unmitigated disaster. I walked up to her in the library, and she was economics accounting major, burning a hole through a book. I tried to have a conversation with her. She looked up and said, "I've got a test tomorrow. I can't talk to you." So it didn't work out. Then I was late for the dance by at least an hour. She was waiting at a cocktail party. Had no idea who I was going to be. She had no idea who the date was. So I showed up, started walking down the hallway, kind of giving the wave of the guilty that I was late. And she said, "Oh, it's you."
Oh, gosh.
That's
yes.
literally what she said. I know it sounds a little dramatic, but it was. And then we kept dating and married.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And it's cute. It's a sweet story. It gives people hope, and it gives people hope, right?
Yeah.
So what is the best advice you've ever received and the worst advice you've ever received?
I would say this for the work that I do as a public official, the best advice, I wouldn't say it was one piece, but it was a series of related pieces of advice. Probably came from my father, who held himself and would hold every other public official to very high standards. And if you didn't meet those standards, he didn't even want to look at you. Mm-hmm. And he's really rigorous about your obligation as a public servant. And part of the advice he gave me was to, when you're a public official in your office, whether it's an office in a county or it's a U.S. Senate office or a state government office, whatever it is, you've got to convey you've got to make it very clear what the ethical rules are when you start. If anything, you should try to make them tougher than what's required of you, and hold yourself and all of your employees to that standard.
Yes.
So that's probably the best advice, because it's the one thing a public official can control: what happens in their office, what their ethical standards are. The worst advice, though, sometimes you get bad advice in a campaign. I don't want to pin that on anybody, because I can't think of one specific example.
Yeah, I get it. In general, that people give you bad advice, and then you have to figure out what to do. Whether it's
sometimes you know it's bad, other times you don't, and you follow it, and then you realize
you just got. Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're quicker questions.
One lightning round.
Lightning round. Yeah. One word, or if you want to explain it, that's fine.
Okay.
If not, just one word. What is your favorite sound?
Well, we've had the blessing for most of my life of being at a lake, so the water hitting the shore
is beautiful.
And often you can hear it at night, because at night sound travels a lot faster. You can hear it more clearly. So that's actually a beautiful memory for me.
That's a good one. What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay. And what is your favorite scent or smell? It could be food. It could be something in nature.
I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's more seasonal, but I'm a real sucker for anything that has pumpkin, like pumpkin spice stuff at this time of the year.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Who is your biggest cheerleader?
Well, I have to say my wife, Therese, who also gives me very candid and sometimes racingly candid advice or feedback.
Well, on behalf of our country and probably Pennsylvania, you say thank you, because it's important, right?
No, she's been, as I said, she's sacrificed a lot to have me do what I do.
Yeah. If you were stuck on a desert island, what would be the one meal you would hope to find there to eat?
One meal. Well, I have a new thing that I've been trying for most of the last year, and I believe it's healthier than what I've been doing prior to this.
Okay.
But I think I added too many things that reduce the health benefits, but that's make smoothies. Peanut butter, I try to put in a little bit of, obviously frozen fruit is the core of it. Some kind of milk or something. But then I throw in a little bit of spinach or kale.
So some good greens.
Microscopic amounts.
Okay, a little bit of greens. Okay.
I don't think you can get that.
Do you make your own smoothies? You just do them yourself?
I do, yeah.
And you're creative. You're the creative.
I wouldn't say I'm creative, but I'm diligent.
Okay, good. That sounds good. What is your favorite music?
I like a lot of kind of top 40 or traditional kind of rock and roll, but mostly Springsteen. I start with him. I like Adele. Guys don't always say that, but I do. I grew up with kind of listening to like the Supremes. Motown, still love Motown. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure you don't have one, but it's still a question I've asked folks. Do you have a favorite household chore?
I haven't done it lately, but I used to take pride in cutting the grass.
Okay.
I've farmed it out lately to someone who's helping us.
Well, you've been busy. Busy.
Yeah. But that kind of work. I mean, I take the garbage out, but again, Therese does everything.
Yeah. I look forward to meeting Therese.
Does gardening. She even tiled a bathroom floor when we moved into her house we're in now. We moved in 1991, but she actually tiled a floor. I don't know how you do that. As someone who's mechanically disinclined.
Yes. Do you, if you and Therese were going to travel somewhere, where would it be that you haven't been before? And not work related, just for fun.
Yeah, that we haven't been. There are certainly parts of the country that I haven't been. She may have. When she was growing up, her mom and dad were better at making sure they traveled, but somewhere in the country, but also if we're talking about across the world, I've been to a lot of places for work that she hasn't been. When I was on the Foreign Relations Committee, especially, I'd go to places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and she wasn't able to go on those trips. But there's just so many parts of the world we haven't had a chance to see as a couple.
Yeah. I'm going to switch a little bit back to your state. And we could go on for hours, but I'm going to ask you, what are 3 to 5 of the best things about Pennsylvania?
Well, I think I'd start with the people.
Okay.
It's about as diverse a group of Americans as you can imagine. We've got so much diversity and variety. Big cities like Philly and Pittsburgh, a lot of other major cities. I live in Scranton, being one of them. Huge suburban communities. But in terms of the geography of the state, we have 67 counties. But of those 67, 48 are rural. So rural meaning small town.
Right.
Not necessarily agricultural rural, but there's plenty of agriculture. We have more people living in rural areas in the state, more than 3 million than most states. We're probably second, third in the country in terms of the number of people living in rural areas. But obviously a rich and diverse economy. And then just the history. I mean, just start with Gettysburg, Independence Hall, in what southwestern Pennsylvania. So much history happened there before we had a government. In southwestern Pennsylvania, Fort Necessity in Fayette County, and so many places like that. I come from the kind of the coal mining, anthracite coal mining part of the state that the other coal mining region is in the Southwest. So we have a story to tell about our history. And increasingly, I think more and more people are realizing that as much as we have a historical foundation, we've got the dynamics of a great future economy as well. So I think it's to begin and end with the people.
Yeah, the people. You brought up something which I wanted to ask, and you reminded me, is your grandfather was a coal miner?
He was.
And then he moved to New York and went to law school?
Well, he like a lot of kids in the anthracite coal mining areas, his father died at the age of 35 in the mines.
Yeah.
When in those days when your father died, the oldest son or the close to oldest son,
right?
I think he was second oldest, but he was pulled into a coal mine, had to go to work immediately to help their family
right.
At the age of 11. So between the ages of 11 and 15, basically a 4-year period, he was in the mines. Just unimaginable today.
Such a young age.
Yeah. But it was not atypical.
Yeah.
He was what they called a mule tender, where the mules were carrying the carts of coal out of the mines in 1905 when he started. And because your job as a young boy in the mines was to make sure that the mule was connected to the car and the straps that connected the mule to the car. Sometimes you would lean over to fix those straps. One time he got kicked in the face by a mule and had a huge cut starting in his forehead, across his eye, through his nose. It split his lip. Just a gash, which a doctor operated on his mother's dining room table. So, I mean, these things were, and there was no workers' compensation, very little health care.
Yeah.
So that was his experience. And then between the ages like 15 and his early 20s, he did all kinds of odd jobs, sold insurance, worked for a streetcar company, did all kinds of things. Eventually got the equivalent of a high school degree when he was about 22, 23, and had no college education. But in those days, if you had enough employer affidavits of your work history, you could get into law school. So he applied to Fordham Law School, got in, finished law school, worked in New York for a couple of years, and then moved back to Scranton.
It's a good story because it kind of talks about America in a way that many people don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, like I said, my mother said, count your blessings. And a lot of days when I feel like you're a little tired and think, wow, he had it much rougher.
I think so. So now we're going to do a little round, a game, which is called Kiss, Marry, Trash. It has other names.
Okay.
But what it is it's a ranking game. So I'm going to give you 3 things: what you would kiss,
Right.
what you would marry, obviously marrying being the most important, and what you would trash, which you would say, I could do with that.
So marry is the highest category.
Marry, kiss, trash.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
This is
this is
hard.
one I haven't played before.
Okay. So the first one is easy. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
I think I would marry lunch for some reason. Kiss for the other two. I wouldn't trash any.
You like them, you know.
I think when I was younger, I was skipping breakfast a lot. I try not to do that now.
Okay. Keeping in mind that you're from the East Coast or, from cold weather areas, seasons, summer, fall, winter.
Well, this is easy. Definitely marry summer and spring, kiss fall, and my God, I would love to get rid of winter.
You're not a big snow and
I'm
everything
tired
fan.
of it. I'm tired of it.
I hear you. In music taste,
Yeah.
pop music, country, hip hop.
Definitely marry pop music. I think the other two I'd say both kiss, but I'm really behind on both.
Okay. Sports, and now, for your state, and you're also a sports, an athlete. You can do it personally or professionally, but sports, basketball, baseball, football.
Yeah, certainly marry basketball, kiss baseball.
Okay, so the last one is pastas, fusilli, penne, or spaghetti.
I'd marry any of them.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
It's a great answer. And then now we're kind of at the last question, which is I've asked each person that I've spoken with. And the question is, what does joy mean to you? What brings you joy? And how do you share joy? Because I do believe in this time, who can share joy, actually, it really is necessary and it feels good.
Yep. Well, I think my definition of joy is probably not surprising. It's family.
Yeah.
Really fortunate. My wife and I, as I said earlier, just were blessed by 4 wonderful daughters, Lise, Caroline, Julie, and Marina. But now, as of starting in April of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, that's when our grandsons arrived, or at least the first one did, and the second one came last summer. So I have Max and Aiden.
How beautiful.
It is pretty remarkable. I used to hear people talk about being a grandparent,
Yeah.
and I thought, my God, it can't be that good. If anything, it's better. I mean, you just can't even imagine it. It's a wholly different kind of love. I mean, you're blessed to have both experiences as a parent and grandparent. But what I didn't realize is you get a whole new identity. I mean, you come into this child's life, and first of all, you get a name. Either you choose a name or it's imposed upon you.
What is yours?
Mine is Bamba.
Bamba?
My maternal grandfather was called. For some reason, my oldest sister couldn't pronounce, or instead of grandpa, said Bamba. So that was his name. He was so wonderful to me, but he died when I was 7. So my daughter said to me, "We got to pick a name." I didn't do it. I forgot to do it. And she said, "Well, we picked it for you. You're Bamba." And I thought, wow, am I worthy of that?
Wow.
But now I walk into the house, their house where they come to ours, and Max and Aiden, they run towards you. I mean, what's better than that in life?
That's
And
the greatest joy.
they have no idea about who I am or what I've done with my life. They don't care.
No.
It's the definition of unconditional love, and that's about as good as you can get when it comes to joy.
Well, I think it's a perfect way to end, because the one thing that I hope and I believe people will get from this conversation is that it's not about the job you have, it's about the heart and your humanity. And I want to thank you, because I think you're a senator of a big state, an important state. You are running for re-election. And I think that people through this in your state and throughout the country have an opportunity from this 30 minutes to get to know somebody who they didn't have as well an opportunity before. And you have a huge heart and you're beautiful humanity. And I love that you're Bamba. I think that's the greatest role. And thank you for sharing.
Best title.
It might be your best title, but either way, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for what you do for so many people. And I'll go back to children and older people and just for our country. And it is important. Thank you. Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Ciao.